All right, Connecticut Democratic Congressman Jim Huns is pushing a new bill that would require at least 2 on-camera White House briefings per week. Former Bush 43 Press Secretary Ari Fleischer has been calling for fewer such briefings, thinking that they bring out the showman and all these television journalists who read a prompter for a living. He's so right about that. Prompter, move up. It's Ari Fleischer with us right now. Good to see you.
Great to be here, Neil.
I think you're dead on about this, but the problem is if they were to do that now, I think everyone would be apoplectic and say, bad timing, you're ostracizing and ignoring and rolling over the press. What do you think?
Well, they're always apoplectic, and that's part of the problem. Right. Both sides of the podium are so angry at each other. My point here, and I've given a lot of thought to this, is we need to have everybody step back and cool things down.
And Mike McCurry, by the way, agrees with you.
Correct. Former Bill Clinton Press Secretary Mike McCurry and I advocated it before President Trump went in. The ideal thing would have been to have done this on January 20th. So now they have to do it in the middle of the game, so to speak. But it's still the right thing to do.
Why?
Because it's too red hot. And it's not a good way for press to get their news. It's a TV show. It's a clash. It's a fight. And everybody then tunes in for cable
what would
viewings.
Your idea be?
All right, so Mike and I have proposed instead that you allow the cameras in the room, but everything is embargoed. No one can use live coverage of the briefing, not audio, not video, until it's over. And therefore, you take the immediate breaking news out of it. And it's a more thoughtful policy briefing the way it used to be.
But would it be different for a big development? Like you were there during 9/11. That supersedes.
You have a right, as the White House then, to say on a major news day, September 11th, September 12th, 13th, 14th, that we're going to go live. But for the normal function of government, that briefing should be a much more boring, sedate affair. It's become pumped up because both sides have an interest, especially the press, in pumping it up. There's a corollary to this, Neil. The briefing should be embargoed, but all cable stations should stop with the breaking news, urgent alert. Everything is breaking now. It's too amped up. And Washington, the country would benefit if Washington was amped down.
Ralph, can you alert that he said to cool it on the alert? I don't know if that's possible. All right. Someone could look at this and hear this and saying, well, this is a former Republican press secretary worried that the media is going too far on Donald Trump.
No, first of all, it's Mike McCurry and me, and we did it before President Trump went in. We said this during the transition. I've long advocated this, actually, and so has Mike. So the whole point here is, are we well served with the briefing? If I'm a reporter, do I benefit from live coverage of the briefing? And I argue you don't. Most print reporters are against live coverage because they want a more serious
briefing. Well, they're not mic'd up.
That's right. They don't wear makeup when they're sitting in their chair. They're not makeup.
My makeup running?
So it's a different entity who's in the room. Most print guys would be fine with this. And
see, I think both sides are very thin-skinned.
Correct.
And I could say this because I can be that way too. But I think when the president gets upset and we call him thin-skinned, and then our behavior is even more thin-skinned, then we look like hypocrites. Now, I also will stress, as I said with Barack Obama, I expect news organizations, Fox included, to get, all persnickety and nasty, but I hold my president, Democrat or Republican, to a higher standard.
Well, you should get persnickety and nasty when events call for it, not because you're on live TV. And that's the problem. In the briefing room, people posture. Both sides of the podium
absolutely.
posture.
But leave that aside about we can agree or disagree over whether a live or tape is better. But do you think that this relationship can work? I think the president strongly dislikes the press. That's an understatement. And I think the press strongly dislikes him. No one likes to be called fake news. So they come back at him and almost take an advocacy position to tear him apart.
Yeah, I think it can work. And, of course, it works with adversarial relationships. And it's most adversarial.
But is this too far gone?
The definition of work in my book is that the First Amendment is intact and reporters have the right to do as they see fit and cover the government in an unvarnished manner. And that's what we should always have.
But they don't cover it in an unvarnished.
Well, they cover it in a biased manner. I will give you that. Absolutely, it's biased. But the
Republican presidents always say that they get a worse deal.
But that's a different issue from the... Oh, absolutely.
But for this president, it's germane because he really believes that.
And he's right. Oh, there's no question about it, Neil. It's so much easier to be a Democrat dealing with the media than it is a Republican on a host of issues, especially social issues. I've seen it all my career.
I bet.
Press has points of view, and the points of view much more closely aligned with Democrats.
But you would be able to handle... I think a lot of it is the manner in which you handle it. I think you, Tony Snow, people who could do it. Pierre Salinger was very good with John Kennedy with a dry sense of humor dealing with it. Ziegler with Nixon, less so. I think that you're the expert here, but as you know, I read a prompter, so I count. I think it's incumbent upon the press secretary to exhibit the same sort of ease that wouldn't invite the wrath of the media.
Yeah, and that's hard to do in the Trump White House, it seems.
Right.
Because I agree with Neil. Part of the success of surviving a briefing is a little humor. To be able to joke around with reporters, to make a tough moment a lighter moment at the occasional right time. But I think in the Trump White House, what the president cherishes is, did you smack them? Did you fight with them? And I'm all for a good smack and a good fight at the right time, but not every minute of every day. And that's another reason to take it off of live TV. The whole thing is too amped up. Washington is too amped up. And I can tell you, Neil, and you know this too, when you get outside of Washington, people don't pay attention to the everyday fights. They say, wake me up when you guys are done fighting and tell me if you did anything for the country. In Washington, everybody cherishes a good fight too much.
They do.